Welcome to Geek Crash, the podcast dedicated to kicking open the door to your next favorite thing. Our mission, our creed, and our code is this: to make all things more approachable and accessible to everyone. We want you to find a universe that you'll fall in love with. Today, I am joined by the Bram Stoker award-winning author of Breakable Things, The All-Consuming World, and one of my favorite novellas of all time that got me actually back into reading prose, Nothing But Blackened Teeth. But today, we're here to talk about their new novel, The Library at Hellbore, Cassandra Khaw. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you. That was such a sweet introduction.
I've been very excited to talk to you.
Aw.
There are two authors that I very much always say are the two that got me back into reading prose. It is you and Stephen Graham Jones, who I have gotten the pleasure of interviewing a few times.
Oh,
But
I love Stephen Graham Jones so much. I reread Mongrels every single year at the very least, at least once. Perfect book.
the Chainsaw Trilogy is like what got me to read again. So
Yeah, that one's so good as well.
and you are also on that list. So I'm very excited to talk with you. But I'm not sure if you've ever had the chance to see or hear one of my interviews before, but I'm a very serious journalist. So I do start out my interviews with pretty hard hitting questions. So I hope you're ready.
I'm all prepared.
What is your favorite sandwich?
Oh, my favorite sandwich. It has to be a po' boy. I lived in New Orleans for a while and I became completely and absolutely obsessed with um crawfish po' boys. I love crawfish po' boys. I love catfish po' boys, and I love like putting as much jalapenos as I can on either.
Same. I love filling with as much spice as I possibly can.
Yes.
Now, you have been writing all sorts of horror for quite some time, and
Mhm.
I assume you've gotten asked a million times what's like your horror origin story. But I am way more interested in what is a particular horror sequence or scene from a book or a movie or any kind of media that has stuck with you? Like, what is that certain horror moment that is just sunk into your heart and that will always be there?
Oh, let's see. This one's easy, actually. My parents were kind of weird, kind of terrible, and once again, kind of weird because they thought that it would be a very normal and okay thing to have, I think, a 7-year-old watch John Carpenter's The Thing and not let me close my eyes through any of the sequence.
That tracks.
And the thing that stuck in my head, and I feel like as I explain the sequence, you'll understand like where my writing comes from and what inspires me on a subconscious level. But the thing that stuck in my head from that movie was that part when there was this doctor who was like putting his hands down over a patient's body and the patient's like stomach opened up into jaws and like bit off his arms, even as the head just kind of like leaped off the table and like grew legs and ran away. I still have nightmares about that decades later, every now and then. And I'm like, hello, old friend. I see you haven't left my subconscious.
I should have asked you to let me guess because that's exactly what came into my head, knowing your flavor of body horror and the things you have in your books. That's the scene that was like, oh yeah, that's probably the one that's got you.
Yes. It's very obvious.
And
I want to
it's like,
mention the movie.
and I think with the practicality of that horror, it's like it feels so real, especially when
It
you're young.
does.
And I think that like I saw Scream when I was like 6 or 7. And I
Oh
watched it from
dear.
the hallway. And I will love slashers until the day I die. Like slashers are my bread and butter.
Yeah.
Um, I think it imprints on you. Like you were forced, you had to watch the entire thing eyes open, which is wild. Oh, I mean, I'm thankful for your parents because they've given me your work. So, um, I don't know what your therapy bills are like, but that is,
There
it's
are a
a
lot. There are a lot. My therapist is very rich because of me.
mine as well. So now with the library at Hellbore, what if you had to pitch this to somebody who has never read like a horror book, how are you going to get them to read it? Like, what is your kind of elevator pitch for this book?
Oh. They've never read a horror book before.
Yeah, how do you get them in?
Have they watched like movies and
Yeah.
TV?
Yeah, they just never gotten past that.
Okay. Battle Royale meets the magicians with gore that would make the boys blush.
That was, did you practice that? That's a great, wow. The battle royale of it all is, I was thinking
Right?
as I was been reading the beginning of it, it's like, this has those vibes in like the best way, especially, I think that I really love in the summary of the book is that you call the students antichrists and Ragnaroks. I'm curious, what kind of experience or like interest did you have in the past of like the prophecies of these types of archetypes? Like, what is your experience with those types of characters?
Hmm. I think in general, I find it incredibly fascinating because I guess I would call myself agnostic. I was raised in Malaysia, and it's really hard to be a full-blown atheist in a country where every religion and every like way of life was kind of mostly accepted. The general wisdom when I was growing up was essentially like, so there are a whole bunch of religions. There might be a whole bunch of gods and a whole bunch of heavens, or there might just be this one dude out there who understands everyone is doing their best job, and he'll eventually get you to where you're going. So with this kind of like openness and shrug, and we were taught evolution and science in school, there was never that need to balance. Oh, this is the bad thing, this is the good thing. I need to reconcile all of it. And so I've been fascinated with how humanity is obsessed both with the idea of perpetuity and also the concept that when their understanding of the world ends, it needs to end in an in like a terrible way, apocalyptic way. Jesus, I lost track of that word. And it's been fascinating, and I can kind of get it because, like, even on an individual level, like the concept of death terrifies us because we cannot process non-existent. The idea of just shutting down and not being able to open our eyes again is just not something most people can get. So I guess as a society, we're going to be a lot more obsessed about making it bigger scale because if we're going to like get snuffed out, it needs to mean something. It needs to resonate through the world. And so I think I've always have had a little bit of an academic curiosity about those archetypes and those people. And this is combined with the fact that I've watched so much horror movies and read so much horror books and have seen so many little kids told that they're destined to bring the end of the world. I can't help but wonder how they feel about it, you know? It
Yeah.
kind of sucks. Like, I don't think half of them probably actually want to be that. And then there's the whole thing about nature versus nurture and what would happen if you had some people who had some nature forced on them, so to speak, and some good nurture enforced later on. Where do they reconcile this? Do they run? Because I could see people like that who have learned to want to be better try to escape. I guess in a weird way, it's also a metaphor for my thoughts on what it's like to grow up in an abusive environment. My theory is one of two things will happen. Either something in you breaks and you decide the only way you'll ever be safe is to be a worse monster than whatever was hurting you, or you break in a different way and decide you absolutely A, cannot be that monster, and B, you will spend your whole life chasing down monsters to stop them from hurting anyone else. And I think the kids in Hellbore are a weird mix of all of these influences.
I love that as like a thematic of the book, just because as I'm going through it, the idea of prophecy is always something that's on my mind, especially with
Mhm.
topics like an antichrist, and you bringing up the idea of like nature versus nurture is like the entire idea of prophecy is based on that. Like, are you destined to become that thing?
Yeah.
Uh, so I think that's a very interesting and a huge selling point for the book, especially in a battle royale type setting. Um, Now, the dark academia of it all, is that like one of the kind of like niches that you're into? Like, are you into like the kind of aesthetics of that all?
I think the aesthetics are great, but for this book in particular, it is sort of me processing the idea that, like, look, everyone is, well, not everyone, I don't want to make complete blanket statements here, but almost everyone is told that to have a good life, you study hard, you go to a good college, you go to a good university, you get good grades, and then you follow a process and you will get to where you want to go. But for me in particular, when I was growing up, my mom told me very frankly, I had to go to this one particular school or else, like I wasn't going to get a higher education. And this school's selling point was they trained you to be an office drone. We didn't have extracurricular activities. We weren't allowed cool hair. We had to dress like we were already in our 30s and like, knee-length skirts and like proper slacks and shit like that. We were trained for the workforce. And I think in some way, Hellbore is processing all of that, how some people use the idea and the environment almost as a cudgel and say, this is the route you must take in order to get to a better place, whether you like it or not, even if the lessons are nonsensical, even if they don't make sense to what you need and what you want from life. But it's the institution, it's there, and we're kind of brainwashed to accept it, even though very often I feel like half of us never use the degrees that we have. We kind of wander off and do something else.
Yeah, I'm a, I am a big higher education is kind of a scam believer. I went to a university for 4 years. I don't use anything I learned. I also may have had a minor degree in partying, but I learned more from doing that than I did from actually
Right?
going to class. Like I learned more from just like interacting with humans than I did from ever picking up a textbook. Like
Yeah.
these, especially the word dark in that dark academia is just like now I have all this debt from place that I didn't really gain anything from other than the networking experience. Like not even
Mhm.
networking, it's just the human experience of it all.
Mhm. Which
Um,
you could have potentially gotten from anything else, from like technical school, from
yeah,
working in an industry that you were interested in, from working apprenticing with a blacksmith.
yeah, which would have been sick. I would,
Yeah.
yeah, and I do think maybe it's changing now in the world that people are seeing that that isn't just a guarantee anymore. Maybe it was at one point, but like, I just don't believe that you're just guaranteed.
I would argue it was never a guarantee because if you
Yeah.
look at so many people in the past and how midlife crisis happen and work, there are a lot of people who got funneled into lives they did not want. And at some point they went, oh shit, I'm not going to live forever. I'm going to have to do something else.
Oh shit. I never
Right?
thought of the midlife crisis as that.
Yeah. People
You were
change their
li-
jobs, change their lives, divorce, get a motorbike, run away with a younger man.
oh my God, they were literally put into these funnels that they didn't even want
Yeah.
to be in. Wow. That's prolific. I was not huh,
You did not look prepared for that, my friend.
I was I was not. Wow. All right. Uh, that's going to be something I'm gonna have to think about. So thank you. Thank you for breaking my brain about that. So, huh. Yeah,
I usually make people a lot more concerned because the stuff I tell them that makes them sit down and stare into the ceiling for a while is usually a little gorier. Would you like to know one of them?
yeah, sure.
So there is this weird little organ thing that kind of lives on your intestines. I can't remember the specific name of it. But if your intestines get injured, it kind of like wiggles up and flops itself over that part of the injured intestine until your injured intestine heals and then it squirms away again. And we all have it.
That's actually really sick. I really want that. I want like a lot of them.
I mean, you do have them. They're inside you right now. We all got them,
Huh. I wonder if I
right?
can make more of them. That's a there's like the expanse of the human experience and body and all that kind of stuff is unfathomable. Like,
I know.
just, and I think I've learned so much more from horror than I have from anything else. Just like about the world and experience and just fun facts, like even just that, like that. There's just something that could just fix it for me. Uh,
I love body horror for that very
yeah.
specific reason. It's a joy for me. I also wanted to be a coroner, and my mother said, "No child of mine will play with corpses," so I wrote about them instead.
The thing about coroners and funeral home directors and stuff like that is that there's always work.
Mhm.
That I was talking about the other day. I was like, I would love if it wasn't like a hard business to break into. I'd love to be like a funeral director because there's always work. Like it's you never got to worry about
Right?
it.
That industry will never die, pun intended.
Yeah. And honestly, I have the business card already made up. It's Dan McMahon putting the fun back in funeral. Like easy as that. And
I
then,
love
yeah, as long as most of the body is there at the end, the people are happy. The rest of it you can sell. But back to body horror. With this one, you've got all these different Ragnaroks and Antichrists. How far did you want to push the body horror in this one versus your other titles where you have explored it um, in different facets? Because this one you're dealing with younger protagonists.
Oh, yeah, one guy gets used as a flesh mecha, so I didn't hold back on this book.
Good.
Um, yeah, there's a guy who gets essentially used as a perpetual meat stick at one point too.
Wow. A perpetual meat stick.
Yeah, I can't say anymore because then there'll be spoilers. But
Oh,
I go full on into the body horror of this one. I have never known not to go full bore body horror.
I,
It's
I
my
like I like
comfort.
I like the crank it to 11 mentality. And the meat stick thing is really interesting because it all of these kids are at this academy and at their graduation, the
Hmm.
faculty is basically gonna eat them.
Hmm. You
Um,
don't know that though.
right. No spoilers, but cannibalism is mentioned in the summary. I am recently I've been writing a bunch of different things, and cannibalism has come up, and I've been doing research into the theming of cannibalism as it's shown up through different narratives and in time and what it's meant through different time periods. Some it stands in for imperialism, some it stands in for love. For you, where do you think cannibalism has its strengths in storytelling?
I think it creates a strange intimacy almost. It is a forbidden thing. It is a horrible thing. But it's also something that I think forces people to recognize the fact that at the end of the day, we are all meat. And on one end of the spectrum, there is the utter horror of being devoured non-consensually by a zombie horde, torn apart your very life, basically turned into fuel and eventually waste. But then on the flip side of that, you have stuff like what exists in like some old Chinese mythology, and I think a lot of like East Asian mythologies have versions of this story where a filial son and his mom are essentially stuck in a cold wilderness during a war or something,
Mhm.
and his mom gets sick. So eventually he decides he needs to keep his mom alive regardless of the cost. So he starts like slicing chunks off his legs to cook for her so she would at least have some protein and the stew was what kept her alive until they could be rescued. So there is that tenderness, offering someone your flesh is one of the greatest sacrifices one can make. Like it goes against every single biological instinct. So I think cannibalism can mean a lot of things depending on the context and the story and the book and the movie. It's complicated, like all things are.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's such a fascinating taboo theme like that. I just have been, as I'm writing about it, I'm just looking into how it's been used, and I just think it's a powerful metaphor, narrative, a real thing that has happened. And it is the mother son story is one I haven't heard, so that is interesting. an interesting approach to it as well, especially that it's the life giving by
Mhm.
slowly taking. Now, with the adults versus the adults and the children, you are setting the adults of this academy versus the students.
Yes. They're in their 20s. They're not kids.
Right. They're young adults.
Yes.
How did you approach putting these two sides against each other? Like, how do you approach it as a writer in their ways of approaching situations?
Um, well, there are certain things that are very unique about the faculty. So I'm going to say they're not like your traditional human adults. And that's the most that I can say without spoiling things. But also in terms of the dynamics between the faculty and the students, I think it came a lot for me processing the idea that, like, as I got older, one of the things I started realizing is how much our society commoditizes youth. It is afraid of young people, but it is also deeply, viciously envious of them. And it is desperately hungry to consume youth. I think for some people, it's a way of pretending that they can extend their own lives. And for other people, it's just flat out resentment at the idea that they have to grow old and they don't want to deal with it. So our entire society is kind of constructed in such a way where we've almost like allowed for the exploitation of the young while also putting them on a pedestal. And you see it most often with AFAB people, the way that like AFAB people are told that they lose their value after they hit a certain age, etc., etc. But it's true of men as well and AMAB people. Everyone is told when they lose their youth, they are nothing. But the only people who ever seem to benefit from that youth because we've set up society so they're always chasing the approval of our elders. The only people who are set up to succeed here are the ones at the very top. The only people who don't want to give up their power or their place and want to keep consuming forever, which is a little bit ironic because personally, I think it's a weirdly beautiful thing that we are finite, like ignoring whether there's an afterlife or not. I'm very undecided on that personally. But there is a certain something to, okay, so we are essentially a blink in the eye of eternity. Humanity is just a flash. Nonetheless, every poem, every story, every piece of art we create, whether it was now or 1,000 years ago, it creates a sense of connection with the future. We go to museums and look at tapestries and paintings and wonder. We are inspired by them. We craft new narratives from old myths. And it happens because people lived and they died and they created beautiful things to reach out into the future with. And I think the people who are afraid of death, afraid of losing their place, forget that because of our own finite state, we kind of create a weird stand against the fact that we are just a blip, just a blink in the eye of eternity. Why are your eyes so large?
You've been just dropping these prolific pieces of knowledge as if they're just like small just little bits of information. Like I'm the things that you're saying are expanding the way I'm thinking. I'm just like, wow.
I
Like,
am a very, very weird drinking buddy. Every time I go out drinking with friends, they tend to end up just staring at me. I'm just like, are you okay?
yeah, I could believe that. Not in a negative way, but like in a I'm never going to be the same type way. Just the idea of the infinite and again, museums, like you're going to look at these things and I know I'm inspired by these older things that create new things, but the people who create them are a blip, but the things that are created are still there and they create new things and it's continuing and the cycle continues. It's
It's additive. We're always adding to the
yeah,
world. At least if we're willing to do it. There are a lot of people who are not.
yeah.
Oh, I have to share one story. It's my favorite story, and I have to trot it out in every single interview, podcast, panel because I love it so much.
I'm ready.
I want everyone to carry this little piece of information with them wherever they go. So I got to know this fine jeweler, and apparently he went to the proper colleges for that. And he had a final year project, and his teacher was like, well, hey there, we need you to make a piece of jewelry, necklace, wedding band, neck bracelet, I don't care. After a year, he comes back, and it's a teeny tiny piece of perfect mouse armor, like embellished, gorgeous, looks like something that you would give to a little rodent sovereign. The teacher currently looked at it and went, never stop making this. And he did not. He has spent his entire life making exquisite pieces of armor that are big enough for mice and cats. And so my cousin bought me this necklace from him. And we got to see his studio and stuff like through a Zoom call, including the fact is that the world's tiniest little anvil. It's such an anvil for mice that he uses to make these things, and I don't know why. And I asked him, I was like, why the obsession about this? And he essentially explained, and now this man's work is in actual museums. And he explained, well, assuming that humanity still exists in 10,000 years, I want people to wonder if the ancients fought with cats and dogs. This man is telling a joke across 10,000 years.
That's incredible. That is the greatest bit.
A joke across a deep time.
Is this DeBoer?
Yes,
These are incredible.
I know. And you can see his point. You're so beautiful
It is
and so perfect.
elegant.
You would think they were made for actual war, especially since they're in actual museums.
Did you when you got to meet him?
Yes, over Zoom.
Did you get to see his hand? Does he have big hands? Like how you have to have like some sort of I could never be able to make something that's
They're gorgeous, aren't they?
they're so that is wild. I love people's commitment to the absurd and the
Yes.
God, I love it. I
A
just
bit across a deep time.
oh, people who have the commitment to this type of thing and can create their art and just do it. I cannot give them enough credit. This
I
is the
know.
stuff that I live for.
But it's
God,
also like it proves my point. Like existing as a human can be additive. And if you know what you're doing and if you're committed to your passion, you survive your mortal form, even if it's because there's this one writer somewhere who cannot stop talking about you.
it's what's that? There's that guy he like takes his kid's blood and like puts it in him.
Yes, I don't remember his name, but I know his face. I can see it very clearly.
Yeah, that's
That's different.
horrifying in a different way.
Yes.
That's like the weirdest version of body horror,
Yes,
and the longevity of it. It, it almost feels hollow.
it
Um,
does. Because it's incredibly selfish. It's not
yes,
really meant for anyone else. All of the techniques that he's using and all the research he's pursuing, you would need
yeah.
millions of dollars to replicate it. I know he says he wants to pave the way, but even if you consider everything else, it'll still be like at least tens of thousands of dollars. Not something everyone can do.
But he's not doing anything cool with it. He's not making like
No.
nice armor or anything. He's just being weirdo. If you're gonna be weird, at least be cool weird. That's my takeaway from all this. But
Make awesome mice armor.
yeah, do something cool. One big question, this is not a weird thing, but there is a deluxe version of this book that I was
Yeah.
Did you get to have input on what the deluxe version looks like? I'm always curious about this type of inside baseball stuff. Like
Ooh.
it's got this beautiful blue edges on the paper. Is that something you got to work with or?
I didn't get a say on the
Mm.
edges, but I was told we were going to have edges, and I was very excited because it's my first book of edges. But I got to give feedback on the cover. They asked for my opinion on what I thought I might want, how I might want things to look. And then when we got drafts of the cover, I got to, pick which one I like. I got to say, hey, I like this particular text or that particular text. So it was minorly collaborative, but at the same time, Macmillan has such a fantastic art team. I'm just happy to be
Yeah,
there.
it's a
It's like
good.
it snuck into, the Oscars and people are like, hey, how are you doing? I'm like, I'm fucking great, man. I'm here.
You made it to the party. I'm also curious, as you have written many books by now, um, as a prose writer,
Hmm.
where do you find your words? Are there ever times where you come across a word that you have never seen before? And I know you said English is your third language. Are there ever times you like come across words that you're just like, oh, I have to use this in something? Do you like write those down? Is that something you like try to craft certain sentences around? Do you have words like that?
I have an eidetic memory. It's not as good as when I was a kid, where I used to get straight A's for history because instead of actually studying what I was supposed to study, I would essentially just swallow an entire book in my brain and just leaf through it in my head during my exams.
So
Um, and I got painfully obsessed with the dictionary, I think, when I was 16 or 17. And so I think I spent a good year or two doing nothing but read dictionaries. So there are a ton of words stuck in my head. All my critics are like, Cass uses a thesaurus. I'm like, no, it's a dictionary and it lives in my skull.
that's wild.
But even today, occasionally I will go down rabbit holes, like architectural rabbit holes, art rabbit holes, and start devouring every single piece of jargon and terminology I can find. And it all goes into the repository in the back of my head.
That's
I do know I don't use the words correctly sometimes, at least in the colloquial sense of the word. I had a friend point out once because I was like, hey, I'm disembarking from the bus soon. And he's like, no, no one says that. And I'm like, but you're leaving a vehicle. And he's like, I understand, but that's not what native speakers say. And I'm like, well, you're wrong. That's how it works in your fucking language.
I mean, you're right. You can use that. You're
Yes,
disembarking from the bus. You are doing that.
yes. But
I,
it's not, yeah, it's the whole colloquial thing where you understand certain cues and stuff. And because it's not my native language, it's not kind of how I was raised.
yeah, but it makes
But
it
yeah,
cool. It makes it more adventurous.
I have a whole bunch of words in the back of my head, and very often I go off looking for new words because they make me happy. I am a magpie. I love words. I love the meaning of words. I love hearing them, and I like knowing how they have emerged and where they come from, the specifics of it. That said, I really cannot stand the word skibbity, and I refuse to ever use it. It has terrible mouthfeel. I apologize to the younger Gen Zers and Generation Alpha folks who might be listening to it, but Skippity has really bad mouthfeel. Just no.
I think it's the first time anyone's ever said the word skibbity on this podcast. Thank you.
I
Thank
understand
you.
it's part of the modern slang, but I refuse. It
I
might make me
don't.
cool, but still.
It's beyond me. I don't understand it, but I know it has something to do with the toilet. That's about where my knowledge of it ends.
Toilet and like siren heads, and apparently the whole thing that it's based from is actually fairly good in terms of talking about colonialism and like storytelling. I've never ventured towards watching it, but I have a friend who did, and she gave it surprisingly good reviews.
The like skibbity toilet YouTube thing, like the
Yeah,
short.
like apparently it's solid. There is an actual narrative there.
That's wild to me. That I
Yeah.
Okay, sure. I'll trust you on that. I'm not gonna delve down that toilet. I've been down a lot of dark roads on the internet. That's not one I'm gonna go down. I don't think I'll come back. Um, but my big final question for you is this is one I've been thinking about for a while, just because My background started with comics, which is um, a collaborative space for writers and things like that. And one of your books that I really do enjoy is The Dead Take the A Train, which you co.
Mhm.
What was that experience like as a prose writer to co-write a book?
Oh, so that was interesting. I'm not necessarily just a prose writer. My day job involves working in narrative design. I've been in video games for about 10 years. So collaboration is pretty normal for me. I'm very, very used to like being given a very short brief and going off and then retrofitting all of it later. And so Richard and I originally came up with the idea that we would like swap chapters and continue along. And I was fine with it. I would write some chapters. He was faster and not doing a day job. So he would write some chapters. But it turned out it drove him insane that I was writing everything out of order and he needed to have a bit more continuity and not just the outline. Random chapters on the back of the book chucked at his head because I want to write those and not the ones I was supposed to write. So we had to figure it out, and essentially we ended up doing passes on the book. So one person would do a full rewrite, then the other person would rewrite the first person's book, and would like exchange it to and fro for a bit until the style became kind of seamless. It was a lot of work, but it was a very interesting learning process.
And I haven't played it, but I've read your 5e module for Dungeons and Dragons. Have you have you ever ventured into the idea of writing your own kind of more horror focused tabletop game, or is that something you don't really have interest in doing?
Um, I did a lot of writing for World of Darkness, if that counts.
It does. World of Darkness. Can I ask what you play in World of Darkness?
Ooh, what I play? Are we talking about Old World of Darkness or New World of Darkness?
I've only played new. I've never played old.
Neo, definitely Werewolf the Forsaken. I love Werewolf the Forsaken far too much for my own good. If we're talking about Old World of Darkness, Mage the Ascension 100%, because I can make a lot of people very scared very quickly. Do not give me limitless power.
Yeah, you know what? I would not. Knowing what you can do with an interview answer, I don't want to see what you can do with power.
I actually scared my cousin when we were playing Baldur's Gate co-op because I decided, yes, I would embrace being a mind flayer. And apparently I giggled like a demon for about 20 minutes as I was like exploring the powers. And I have this distinct memory of the poor man going, Cass, stop. You're scaring me. I'm not joking. You're actually scaring me. I'm like, I've thrown 5 fireballs at one time. Oh, look, I can eat him. And he was like, Cassandra, stop, please.
As soon as I got I think it was whatever when you go into Act 3 and you're like, yeah, I'll take the worm. As soon as I did it, I could not stop singing "I Can Fly" because you get the ability to fly. I was like, wee, just like
I
zipping
know.
around. It was that game. I cannot believe they made a full game that just felt like a tabletop, like
They're so good.
just worked. I was shocked. Like I just couldn't believe it just did it. Um, but thank you so much for being here. The book will be on sale in bookstores on July 22nd. Make sure you are pre-ordering it now wherever you get your books. Check out your local bookstore, pre-order there. If you can't, you can pre-order anywhere you can get books. Are there other things people should be picking up from you now?
I recently had a collaboration with Hex Mundi, and the lovely, lovely, lovely person in charge actually made 2 perfumes based on my books, Nothing But Black and Teeth and The Salt Grows Heavy. Hex Mundi, Hex space Mundi. They smell amazing on my skin. It smells like salt and blood and flesh. And the first time I sprayed myself with it, I had to resist the temptation to chew on my arm. I smelled delicious. I smelled like the best cut of meat you could have ever gotten from like a fancy butcher. So
That is
please Do
Wow.
buy perfume from that lovely, lovely lady.
Where did she sell?
It should be just on Etsy or her website.
Okay, I will make sure to link that because now I want to smell it.
They're excellent.
That's so cool.
Now, the Nothing But Black and Teeth perfume smells like that moment before all hell breaks loose and it's just heady and there's incense and flowers. Whereas, like, the Salt Grows Heavy's perfume smells like a garden on the seaside and a fresh corpse hidden in the roses.
Oh, good. Wow.
It's so good.
Well, okay. This is might be my new thing. I'm very interested in this. That is wild. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's incredible. You can find us at gatecrashers.fan where we do all of our interviews, reviews, analysis, and everything and more. We will talk to you again soon.
Bye.
It's the Gatecrashers.